Hey, welcome back. Today we're looking at factoring again. This time we're looking at factoring when we have a coefficient in front of our x, so it's no longer going to be blank there. It's no longer going to be a is equal to 1. It might get a little bit more complex, but we kind of built the foundation of what we want to do earlier. It's just a couple more steps. All right, so the first example, be careful on these ones. Notice that we only have two terms. We have the y squared and the y term. There is no constant term. There's no c. So what we're going to do in this case is we're just going to factor out, so note here that there's no c, right? So in this case, what we're going to do is factor out the GCF. Okay, so out of 6y squared and 18y, I know that they're both divisible by 6 and they both have a y. So I'm going to pull out the 6 and the y here. And then on the inside, we're going to be left over with, in the front, we took out the 6, we took out one of the y's, so we just have a y left. And then the second part, we took out the y, so we don't have any y's. And then 18 divided by 6 is going to give us 3. All right, so once we get to this point, then we have zero product property again. It's different because we don't have two parentheses. But what we do have is this parentheses and the 6y multiplied together. So, let's do it the long way. 6y equals 0, or y plus 3 equals 0. So if we divide by 6, then we get y equals 6. Or if we subtract 3 on the right side, then y equals negative 3. So those are two zeros for this quadratic function for your parabola. All right, so just be very careful. If we only have two terms, then that probably means something special is going on. So we want to try to factor out our GCF. All right, and the second one is asking us to solve for v squared minus 7v equals 2. So the first thing to note here is that it's always got to be equal to 0. So if we're given something and it's not equal to 0, all we have to do is do some algebra and move it over. So we're going to move the 2 back over so it's equal to 0. All right, so we're going to move the 2. So then we end up with 4v squared minus 7v minus 2 equals 0. Okay, so we're working with this one instead of the top one. It's just something they like to do to trick you. I don't know why they don't write it in standard form, but just making sure you're paying attention. All right, so let's go through the steps here. The steps are pretty similar to what we're doing last class when we're just factoring without the a. It's just at the end that it gets a couple more steps. Okay, so the first thing we want to do when we get it into the correct form, right, we're going to do our a times c. So our a is 4, our b is negative 7, our c is negative 2. So we're going to do 4 times negative 2, which is negative 8. And then our b is going to be negative 7. So what we're looking to do here is find what multiplies to get negative 8. And then adds to get negative 7. So we're looking at the factors of negative 8. We can do negative 8. Oops. Times 1, right? Negative 8 times 1 is negative 8. We could do negative 4 times 2. And then we could do the flip-flops, but let's just check this one first. So negative 8 times 1, when we add that, negative 8 plus 1, we get negative 7. Oh, okay, so we hit it right off the bat, right? So we know we're looking at negative 8 and 1. So that was step 2. Okay, step 3, we're gonna it's going to be a little bit different. So step 3, we're going to take our 4v here and put it in parentheses, 4v, and then we're going to put our minus 8, and we're doing it again, 4v plus 1, and I just kind of discovered this method, and it's a little bit easier than the way I used to teach before with the box. I know some of you guys are used to the box if you've already done it with the box, and if you are, then feel free to do it, but a lot of people mess up the steps. So again, we're just taking this 4v from the front, we're putting it here in here instead of just v's like we did the first one, the first factoring lesson. And then what we're going to do here is we're just going to divide everything by 4. Okay, so because we have the 4's in front of the v's, we're going to divide everything by 4, and then we're going to get, let's stay in this color. 4 divided by 4 is 1v, minus 8 divided by 4 is 2. And then for the second one, 4 divided by 4v is v, that's what we want. Plus 1 divided by 4 is 1/4. Okay, so in this step, you get the 4v from the equation. And then here, we're just going to divide by that 4. Okay, and the last step, we're going to apply the zero product property. So we have v minus 2 times v plus 1/4 is equal to 0. So one of those things has got to be equal to 0. Let's do it the short way this time. So what minus 2 equals 0? That's 2. What plus 1/4 equals 0? That's negative 1/4. And then we're done. Okay, so just a couple more steps. Again, we get this 4v from our equation in the front. Then we just divide by that number. So since we had 4v, we divide by 4. It simplifies everything, and then we end up with our zero product property again like we did before. So this is just the extra step here that we have to do if we have an a in front, a number in front, the x squared or the v squared in this case. Okay, just want to do another example for this one. We can stick in green. All right, again, notice that it's not equal to 0, so we have to take this stuff. It's always good, it's a good rule of thumb to keep our x squared positive. So because the x squared is already positive, we have positive 3x squared. We want to move everything else towards that side. If it were the other way around, then we might consider moving the x squared side. All right, so let's do this all in one step. So we're going to add the 7x and add this, and subtract the 6. So the whole right side is going to be equal to 0. And then on the left side, we have 3x squared plus 7x minus 6. Okay, so we got into the correct form. Now we want to identify our a is 3, our b is 7, our c is negative 6. Once we did that, we can go ahead and do our a times c, 3 times negative 6. Is equal to negative 18. And our b is 7. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're trying to find what multiplies to get negative 18, adds to get 7. Negative 18 has a little bit more factors to go through. So we could do negative 1 times 18. If we add those, we end up with negative 17. That's not the one. We're looking for 7. We could do negative 1 times... not negative 1. Negative 2 times 9. When we add those, that gives us... First one is on negative 17. It's positive 17. Oops. Okay, and then for this negative 2 times 9 it's negative 18. Negative 2 plus 9 is 7. That's the one we want. So we're looking at negative 2 and 9 for step 2. Okay, step 3, we're going to take our 3x, right? So we're going to put 3x in parentheses, 3x in parentheses, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put in our minus 2 and our plus 9. That's going to be equal to 0. And then we want to divide by 3, right? Because 3 is in front of the x. So here we get 3 divided by 3 is 1x. Minus 2 divided by 3 is 2/3. In the second parentheses, 3 divided by 3 is 1 again. And then 9 divided by 3 is 3. And we're just going to apply our zero product property here. What minus 2/3 equals 0? Positive 2/3. What plus 3 equals 0? Negative 3. Okay. Yeah, a lot of people struggle with this in this section right here, mostly because some of us forget our factors and our tables, and sometimes we mess up our signs. So just be very careful when you do that. If you have to make a list of factors, then feel free to do so. Right, so for this one, you could do negative 1 times 18. Positive 1 times negative 18. You could do 2 times negative 9. Negative 2 times 9. 3 times negative 6. Negative 3 times 6. Just to make sure you got them all there, right? Before you start trying to add and see which ones add up to the correct number, in this case 7. So if it helps you at first, you can just make a list. It's easier than just guessing and checking the whole time and not having a coordinated list, because then you might do the same one twice or forget which one you did, and that just turns into a mess if you need to. But if you're pretty good with your number sense, and you can kind of figure out which numbers go together, and the more you practice, the easier it gets. Okay, let's apply one last one. This one is a word problem, which I know some of you guys hate, but it's one of the problems that you will see in standardized tests, so I did want to go over it. So it says the area of a rectangle is 63 meters squared. So we're going to circle that. And its length, right? So its length is 5 meters more than twice its width. Find dimensions of the rectangle. So when it says dimensions, what they want us to find is length and the width. All right, so let's write down the information that we have here. So we kind of underlined it already. Let's talk about what we know. So the area, so we're looking at area. We know the area for a rectangle is going to be the length times the width. Okay, we also know that the area in this particular case is 63. We know its length is going to be 5 more than, that's a plus, 2 times its width. So I'm going to say that the width is W, and the width is the width. All right, we're going to say width is equal to W. Okay, so find the dimensions of the rectangle. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug in all this information that we have into our equation. So the area is equal to 63. The length is going to be 5 plus 2W. I'm putting it in parentheses, right, because we're substituting. And then W is also W. And we could put that in parentheses as well, but we really don't need to. We have the 5 plus 2W in parentheses. Now, this should look a little bit familiar, but if not, what we're going to do is we're going to distribute our W. So then we get 63 equals 5W plus 2W squared. Now this kind of looks like a quadratic function, right? It's just got to be equal to 0. So let's move over to 63. And let's kind of rearrange this so that everything is in order. So we have, let's put our 2w first, 2w squared plus 5w, nothing changed there, we just flipped them around, and then minus 63 equals 0. So what it's asking us to do here is to solve, right? So let's go ahead and solve this. Hopefully we have enough room. Our a is 2, our b is 5, our c is negative 63. So let's do a times c, which is negative 126. Our b is 5. Okay, so the next step is we're looking at what multiplies by to get negative 126 and adds to get 5. The smaller the b is, the closer those numbers are together. So we're probably not going to use 1 and 126. Let's use something closer. So I don't know, 126 divided by, can't do 4. We can do 6, but now let's try it. So this is negative 6 times, what would that be? Negative 6, let me get a calculator here. Where's my calculator? $126 divided by 6 is 21. This is too far away still, right? Because those would add up to get 15. All right, let's do what would be another one? 9. 14. Okay, so when we add these two, we end up with 5. This is the one we want. So we're looking at negative 9 and 14. So what we're going to do again is we're going to take this 2w, right? So 2w, 2w, we have minus 9 and plus 14. Okay, we're going to divide by the 2 from the 2w. So then we get w, oops. Minus 9 halves, or we can say, because we're working with lengths here, we'll do 4.5. And here we get w plus 7. Okay, so the zero product property here says that we're looking at what minus 4.5 equals 0, so w equals positive 4.5. Or what plus 7 equals 0, that's negative 7. Now keep in mind that when we're talking about shapes, for the most part, unless we have them on a coordinate plane, which we don't, we're just talking about a regular rectangle, that we cannot have negative numbers. So it doesn't make sense to have a negative length. There's no such thing as that. Right, so we know that the width is going to be 4.5 here. Right, so find the dimensions. We found the width. Be very careful here that we don't just stop there. We need to also find the length. So all we need to do here is plug the width back into w to find the length. So let's do that now. The length equals 5 plus 2 times 4.5, right, from up here. The width is 4.5, so then we get 5 plus 9, and the length is going to be equal to 14. Okay, so now we have the width and we have the length. We know we're done. Okay, it's a little bit messy, but it's using skills that you guys already know, and it's working with the area of rectangle. And we showed a little bit more steps than maybe usual, but I do like to show that setup part where we identify all the information we have, write them as variables, so that once we start plugging them in and putting them together, then it's a little bit easier in this step here. Okay, but other than that, it's just working through it kind of like you were doing before. All right, make sure that